Notice is hereby given of the meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7:30 PM on the evening of Tuesday, March 11th, 2014, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Friday, March 7th, 2014, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Alternative Press, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, may we have a roll call?
Rich Matesic. Lucy Beegler. Ann Carey. Here. Mark Friedman.
Here.
Brendan Galligan. Roseanne Kirstead.
Here.
Ginny Lights.
Here.
Gretchen Olig.
Here.
Mitch Slater.
Here.
Mitch, will you lead us in the flag salute?
I'd be honored.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements. Mitch, can we start with you?
Absolutely. So this is from Fine Arts, a reminder that this weekend, March 13th to 15th, Westfield High School will present Anyone Can Whistle, which is from Stephen Sondheim and is one of his most rare productions, and it's going to be pretty cool. So check it out if you can. Performances are at 7:30. And Edison's Intermediate School's spring musicals coming up. That will be The Little Mermaid. That will be held March 27th through 29th. The Thursday performance is at 4 o'clock. Friday and Saturday are at 7:30. And just a note, I had the opportunity to attend the Roosevelt School this weekend, the production of 13. And congratulations to the director, Kim Johnny, and to all the kids and everyone that worked so hard on the show. It was just fantastic. And if you get a chance to see some of the other productions we're doing, please do. Really great job.
This is information from Westfield High School. Congratulations to Westfield High School 9th graders Jack Leibling, Mark Kostiak, and Cole Feltman, who received the Students Change Hunger Award last week from the Community Food Bank of New Jersey. The boys' combined efforts resulted in a contribution of 1,068 pounds of food collected from September through November in 2013. Westfield topped 9 other schools with more than 1,500 students participating, including state colleges and universities. Cole Feltman, who has been volunteering at the food bank over the last 2 summers, encouraged his 2 friends to join him. Cole explained that they made announcements in school and had food put in a bin there, collected at a local Frisbee tournament, at the Westfield High School football game, and from friends, family, and neighbors. The most important part of the effort, which all 3 boys agreed upon, was we raised food to help hungry people throughout New Jersey. Congratulations to these young citizens who are really providing great opportunity and becoming mentors to us all. Good example.
Ann?
This is from the high school. Congratulations to Alexa Derman, Westfield High School senior, who was awarded honorable mention in the Theater Project's 12th Annual Young Playwrights Competition. The goal of the competition is to encourage the next generation of theater practitioners by honoring their work and bringing it to life. Alexa will be presented with a citation and a gift certificate. It is unlikely that she will be able to receive the award in person since Alexa is busy in this weekend's performance at Westfield High School. She is a busy and talented student, and we congratulate her on yet another award. Congratulations.
This is from the elementary schools. Congratulations to Washington Elementary School teacher Mike Bukowski. He has co-authored an article with Professor Avery Feigenbaum of the Department of Health and Exercise Science at the College of New Jersey. The article, entitled Fundamental Integrative Training, How to Incorporate This New Type of Training in the Gymnasium, will be published this summer in the Journal of Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. Mr. Bukowski recently presented a workshop at the annual New Jersey Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance convention entitled FIT, which is an acronym for Fundamental Integrative Training, a program he has pioneered at Washington School. Lastly, Mr. Bukowski was awarded a $1,000 grant for heart rate monitor sticks that the students can hold and monitor their heart rates in phys ed class to tell them how hard they're working. Thank you to Mr. Bukowski for his dedication to the health and well-being of our students.
I have a special education announcement. The Westfield Parent-Teacher Council Special Education Committee presents the 21st Annual Awareness Expo on Wednesday, March 19th, 2014, from 7 to 10 at Edison Intermediate School. A total of 10 presentations are scheduled with experts discussing topics from anxiety to technology. Each session will be presented twice, once from 7:40 to 8:40, and again from 8:45 to 9:45. All programs have been designated for professional development hours. Please check the district's website for specific information regarding the presentations. The presentation of the Make a Difference Award will be made to Kathy Wildstein, our pre-K teacher at Lincoln School, who has truly made a difference to the parents, students, and educators of the Westfield special education community.
Westfield High School Project 79 coordinator and teacher, Peter Horn, is quoted in the spring 2014 Teaching Tolerance website. The article underscores the benefits of serial testimony, which is the practice of emphasizing the student's experience and engagement in the curriculum. In the article entitled Beyond the Knapsack, author Peggy McIntosh makes reference to the value Horn places on serial testimony in the classroom, and Mr. Horn provides pertinent examples.
I have something about the Odyssey of the Mind finalists. Westfield Odyssey of the Mind teams had spectacular results at the recent Regional Odyssey competition. Out of the 8 teams that competed, 3 from Jefferson, 2 from Franklin, and 3 from the gifted program at Edison Intermediate School, the following 5 teams will be moving on to the state finals on April 12th. From Edison Intermediate School, placing first in the vehicle problem, driver's test, Division 2. The team includes Massimo Del Pizzo, Gaia Gannison, Megan Johnson, Jordan Phillips, and Sophia Vera. Placing second in the performance problem, Seeing is Believing, are the following students: Noah Dengler, Kurt Hugh, Aiden Kilborn, Nathan Lamb, and Paige Busey, Reed Busey, and Matthew Fornicchio. Also placing second, but in a classics problem, is How We Rule. Hannah Cherry, Will Crawl, Billy McGuire, Amanda Rosenthal, Meredith Rosenthal, and Erin Roth. And now from Franklin, placing second in the technical problem, The Not So Haunted House, was Catherine Orr, Kate Johnson, Vivian Jekyll, Charlie Jekyll, Matthew Swenson, Carson Sharkey, and Grace Clegg. And finally, from Jefferson, placing second in the performance problem, Seeing is Believing, was Maya Diaz, Allison DeFalco, Sayi Edekar, Hannah Everett, Nikhail Yotishi, Shreya Yotishi, and Joshua Metz. Congratulations to all the students who participated, and thank you to their parent coaches. Good luck to the finalists in the state competition next month. And lastly, the next Board of Education meeting will be held on Tuesday, March 25th. We will continue discussion of the 2014-2015 proposed budget. I'd like to recognize the public for agenda items only. Seeing no one come to the podium, I'd like to move on to the superintendent's report.
Right, we do have 2 superintendent reports tonight. We had started the budget presentations last week, gave an overview of the budget, and also provided specific information on technology. Next meeting, March 25th, we will be presenting specific information regarding facilities. But tonight, when we presented the entire budget last week, one of the bullets on one of the slides said, we're going to maintain current programs. And that was it. It didn't specify what that means. What that means is all of the services provided to our students. So what we thought we would do tonight as part of the budget was to prevent some of that information. What does it mean when we say we're maintaining current programs? What are the different programs? So for that presentation, I'm going to turn this over to our business administrator, Dana Sullivan.
Thank you. Okay, so this slide we showed last week, and again, Dr. Dolan just referred to it. For the 2014-15 budget, we are continuing funding for our literacy initiative. We're also continuing funding for technology. In this budget, we have funds to meet our park requirements, and that's mostly for laptops and also for wireless, enhancing our wireless access. We are continuing funding for our STEM program. Funding is in the budget for all of our mandated programs and academic support. We will be maintaining our existing class size guidelines in all schools. All of our co-curricular athletic fine arts programs are maintained. We are providing resources for enrollment increases at the high school. We do have funds in the budget to maintain our facilities, although, as Dr. Dolan also mentioned, we'll be talking at our next meeting about using capital reserve and maintenance reserve to do some bigger projects in the area of maintenance. The tax levy is at the state adjusted cap, and overall this budget reflects a state aid increase of $66,677. So, as we mentioned a little while ago, maintaining our current programs. So we started out looking at curriculum instruction and what the guiding principles are in our instructional program. So we want to develop 21st century learning skills, college and career readiness, implementation of the Common Core standards, integration of technology into all aspects of our curriculum, and professional development. This budget reflects funds in several areas targeted towards professional development for our teachers and administrators, and all of our staff, actually. We do have money in there for our literacy program, the reading and writing program. We have money in there for training for our staff in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, integration of technology, assessment, and also funds to develop staff in the Marshall evaluation system, which is in its first year, full year of implementation. So then we looked to say, what in all of our schools are we providing instructionally that goes above and beyond the basics courses? So I'm not going to read all these slides to you, but at the high school we have more than 175 courses offered to our students. More than 80 co-curricular activities are offered. So when we talk about the fact that 80% of our budget is targeted towards staff salaries and benefits, obviously this is part of the reason why, because all of these programs require staff to teach. We have 17 advanced placement courses offered at the high school. We have an alternative college prep program called Project 79 for average and above average students that need a different type of setting. And then we have a number of different classes in all areas: math, foreign language, social studies, English, science, phys ed, that are courses that are above and beyond what a basic course would be in those areas that are offered for our students. At the intermediate level, we offer fine and practical arts for students in grades 6 and 7. We have a variety of electives for our 8th grade students, which you can see on the screen. We do offer 3 full years of either French or Spanish to all of our students. We have guidance counselors for each grade at the intermediate level, and we have student leadership opportunities such as student council and peer leadership. At the elementary levels, we have a gifted program. We continue to have library and media centers. We offer Spanish for grades 3, 4, and 5. We offer art and music. And at all levels, we have a variety of specialists, psychologists, counselors, social workers, nurses, OT, PT. learning disability teacher consultants, and others that are available to our students to help with special needs. In the area of athletics, we offer 27 sports at the high school. We have 65 teams, 6 teams at the intermediate level. We have about 1,018 of our high school students that participate in sports, which and a total of 1,556 players. That's obviously some students participate in more than one sport. And then we have about 128 intermediate level students that also participate in athletics. In the area of visual and performing arts, and again, I'm not going to read all these to you, but you can see we have a number of students that participate at the high school level, 2 jazz ensembles, and a number of students, quite a number of students that are involved in the fall drama and the spring musical. At the intermediate level, 6th and 7th graders have a full year of music and 2 marking periods of art. A number of students enrolled in art, music, and drama. We have extracurricular performing groups that meet for students at the intermediate level. And again, a number of students are involved in the fall and spring musicals and dramas. And we also have a drama club at the intermediate level. At the elementary level, we have instrumental lessons that are provided for 4th and 5th graders. We have, every 5th grade student has a chorus experience. And 218 elementary level students were selected to perform with the All-City Ensemble this year. And moving into more of the numbers in the budget, and all of these slides that we're showing from here on in are slides that you saw last week, and the numbers have not changed from last week. So just to go through these, I'll go a little quicker than I did last week. But you can see on the budget for 13-14, the total operating budget before adjustments was $92.0 million. The proposed budget before adjustments in 14-15 is $94.7 million, and that's a little less than a 3% increase. And then we had going down the columns there, the 13-14 budget gets adjusted for purchase orders that rolled over from 12-13. We also transferred funds into 13-14 from the maintenance reserve for facility projects. So our total adjusted budget for 13-14 is $93.1 million. Our special revenue fund, which is where we account for our grants, and that would be local, federal, and state grants, actually shows a decrease, but as I mentioned last week, that's only because we don't budget in special revenue until we receive official notification that we will receive grants. So that number will actually increase as we get into the 14-15 year. Our debt service actually went up total, and our tax levy went up a little bit more because our state aid actually decreased in debt service. So our total budget actually is going from $98.6 million to $99.5 million. So the 2% cap that we've talked about in the past is a cap increase on the tax levy. That's not on the expenditure side of the budget. So if we look at the 2013-14 tax levy, that was $86.3 million. The 2% increase was $1.7 million. That would bring us to the cap before adjustments. The state allows us to adjust that cap for certain increases in the budget. The only adjustment that would be applicable to us is the increase in our health insurance costs. So for 2014-15, we are able to increase that cap increase by $400,149. We were also allowed to use adjustments from prior years that had not been used. So we are using an adjustment from 11-12 and also an adjustment from 13-14 budget. We did not have an adjustment available for us from the 12-13 year. So our total adjustments to the cap increase is $879,443, which brings our total proposed tax levy to $88.9 million, which is a 3.02% increase. But that, as I said before, that is within the state adjusted cap. We had an increase in our basic state aid of $124,000. There were 2 new areas of aid that were given to the district this year. One is called Park Readiness Aid, and we were given $62,000. The other is Per Pupil Growth Aid, and that was also $62,000, which makes up our $124,000 increase. That is considered basic state aid, so although it's referred to as Park Readiness Aid, it is given to us and we can use it for any purpose that we chose. We also are budgeting $1 million for extraordinary special ed aid. That number is still an estimate at this point. We won't know the amount, we won't even know the 13-14 actual amount until sometime later in this year. So we're estimating next year to be about $1 million. As I mentioned, our debt service aid went down by $57,000, and that's reflected on this slide. So our total state aid went up by $66,677. And again, we showed this slide last week, the cost per pupil. This number is actually calculated by the Department of Education. They use audited data that they receive from every school district. The most recent data that we have is 2011-12, which is why we're using that in this slide. And this calculation is for districts that are K-12 districts with over 3,500 students because they're considered similar in size. So Westfield spends about $12,133, and the state average for districts of our size is $13,738. So we're considerably less than the state average for districts comparable to ours. And again, just to highlight the accomplishments, certainly we talked about all the offerings we have in the district, and our students are certainly doing well as a result of those programs that we offer and the teachers that we have. 90% of our high school students continue their beyond graduation in education. Our SAT scores surpassed the state average by 230 points. We had 7 national merit finalists, numerous state and county championships for our athletic teams, and numerous national and regional rankings in academic and fine arts competitions. We see these at every board meeting. So the allocations of our budget, 61.6% of our budget is spent on direct instruction in the classroom. Another 2.7% is spent on transportation costs. School principals, secretaries, and school-related office costs are about 4.4% of our budget. Support for our students, child study team members, related services, extraordinary services are about 8.4% of our budget. Central office, technology, and other central support services are 4.8% of our budget. Athletics and co-curricular about 1.6%. Health, guidance, and library costs are about 5.8%. And maintaining our facilities, utilities, and insurance is about 7.5% of our budget. And our staffing, as we mentioned, 80% of our budget is for staff, salaries, and benefits. 47.9% are for regular ed teachers, and another 28.2% are for special ed teachers and paraprofessionals that work directly with students. 7.4% of our staff is custodial and maintenance staff. 3.5% is central office, again including technology in that. Our principals, supervisors, and school secretaries are about 6.3% of our budget. Student support, which is nurses, guidance, and librarians, is about 6.4% of our budget. And our athletic staff is about 0.3% of our budget. So in the 14-15 budget, we have some staffing changes from the 13-14 year. At the intermediate level, we do expect a slight decrease in enrollment. So because of that, we think we can decrease 1.8 full-time equivalent teachers at the intermediate level. Also, we're going to decrease some extra classes that are currently taught by intermediate level teachers. So we do have a decrease at that level. We have a slight increase in basic skill at the intermediate level teacher. At Westfield High School, we were adding 2 teachers to accommodate enrollment increases that we expect next year. We also added a .4 Mandarin teacher, and that's to expand the program that is currently in place for Mandarin. For special ed, we added a resource room teacher at intermediate level. We're anticipating 2 paraprofessionals, and we are also providing for a physical therapist. That cost is actually, we think we are going to save money and be able to reduce from our related service account in order to pay for that. So that actually did not result in an increase in the budget. So overall, we have an increase of 4.8 staff in the budget for next year. And we talked extensively about technology last week. So again, this is a slide that shows the technology budget. We do have $124,000 more in the budget when you look at the original budget than we did last year. That 124 also coincides with the increase we got in our state aid. And as we talked last week, we are anticipating being able to enter into a lease purchase agreement where we can increase our wireless, upgrade our wireless access, upgrade all of our switches, switch our servers over to virtual servers, and hopefully do all of that this summer and pay for it over the next 3 years, which is the $369,509 that's showing in the different color blue there. What we didn't talk about last week were requests that were not included in the 14-15 budget. We did talk about technology. That was expanding the wireless access in the classrooms, also virtualizing all of our desktops and applications. And the cost to do all of that would be another $2.4 million, which is not included in the 2014-15 budget. We had a request for some additional teachers in various schools, and that was, we accommodated some of them, as you can see, but some of them we were not able to accommodate in this budget. We had a request for additional administrators in the district in both special ed and regular ed, which are not reflected in this budget. We had requests from the athletic department to add some additional programs and also a trainer, which we were not able to accommodate in this budget. We had some requests from the fine arts department for additional staff that we're not able to accommodate either, and then some support items for $38,000. So overall, there was about $3 million worth of requests that have not been included in the 2014-15 budget. And just to review the timeline again for the budget, but this calendar is actually set by the state of New Jersey, so we have to adhere to these timelines. We are required by March 20th to submit a tentative budget to the county for the executive county superintendent's review. Before we can submit that budget, the board has to approve the tentative budget, so that's what we are asking you to do tonight, so that we can send that to the executive county superintendent for her review. They then have until April 24th to review that budget, and then the board has to hold their public hearing before May 7th, between April 24th and May 7th. So we have our public hearing scheduled on April 29th, and then you can, once you hold your public hearing, you can adopt your final budget. So as of now, we have that all scheduled for April 29th. Does anybody have any questions on the budget?
Can you just clarify for everybody what PARC is? Because I know that some people, we all obviously know, but
What's it stand for?
well, just so people
Right,
know what it
PARC is
stands
the new online assessment program that New Jersey and 20 other states are adopting, and we're going to field test it this spring, but it's going to be in place for next year. So as of next year, all the state assessments that our students take will be online tests, and they are called PARC.
So it's replacing HESPA.
It's replacing HESPA and NJASC, exactly. Thank you.
Ginny?
Thank you, Dana. And thank you for the percentage increase decrease on last week's presentation. I have 2 points on that, and then really a question brought to mind by our intermediate school mention of robotics. we have worked hard to put some pre-engineering type courses in the intermediate school as an elective choice. Where do we stand with developing an engineering program at the high school? I think I've lost track of that.
I think Paul Panera can speak to that. He'll come up to the microphone.
Hi, everybody. The robotics program at the intermediate school has been a wild success, as demonstrated by some of our robotics teams and how well they perform. And we do know that the interest for those students may carry into the high school. At this time, we are putting into place an architecture and design course for next year, which we had in the works. And we're still considering the idea of robotics representing engineering at the high school level to some extent. But we really also want to focus very strongly on computer science. We have a good computer science sequence where courses offered at the high school. But really, when we look at what's out there as far as careers are concerned and job opportunities, it's very much linked to apps and computer science and development. So it's all on the table, I guess, is the answer. But right now, we're going to introduce the course that I mentioned about architecture and design. And we're doing some surveying of magnet schools and other schools to see what their computer science programs look like. And certainly robotics is in that discussion as well. But that's why it's not carrying over sequentially.
Thanks.
Anne?
So just in terms of process, tonight we are going to vote on the tentative budget, which is really just a maximum dollar amount, right? And then tomorrow, the Facilities Committee will meet, and we'll meet again on the 21st. And so at some point between tonight and April 29th, I know Rich isn't here, will the Facilities Committee be giving a more detailed discussion of facilities projects for the next year?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And on March 25th, we'll be presenting to the board a detailed presentation on that. That doesn't really impact this budget that much because most of those projects, all of those projects, are being funded out of the capital reserve or the maintenance reserve,
Okay.
which is not in the operating budget. So that's why we're doing that at a different time. But yes. In fact, the Facilities Committee has already had the details for
Right.
a couple of times, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
I guess actually I had a somewhat related question because when I looked at the slide for what's not in this year's budget, it strikes me that most of it, with the exception of maybe technology, are requests that filtered up from our building administrators for additional staff, additional classes and things like that. But there are certainly other considerations like facilities that if we had the money, we would be devoting some of those resources in that area too. So. Correct, is that right?
Absolutely, and in fact, we talked about that a little bit because I said if I start adding in facilities that we can't do, the list will be never ending.
Right.
You know, because there's, even on the 5-year plan, which is certainly not all of the projects that we could potentially want to do.
Right.
So that's the only reason that that's not included on there, because facilities, there's just so many needs.
Right.
But absolutely.
And also because a lot of the money comes from the capital and the reserves and not the operating budget. And this
Right.
is about the operating budget.
Right, exactly.
But it doesn't have to
But
be
it doesn't
that
have
way,
to be.
right?
We could have funded some projects out of the operating budget.
If we could.
If we
If
could,
we-
right, but
right.
I mean, I could have just kept adding projects to the list.
Ginny?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to just make note of 2 areas I thought where some of our costs were increasing. One is out-of-district tuition, which we're increasing our instructional amount 6.85%, which is
What page are you on?
I'm not on this, but
Ah,
I'm
okay.
on page 12 of the annotated presentation that the board was
Yeah.
given. It's about a not quite $450,000 increase, which is significant. And I think that we need to make note of it and be aware and just highlight the fact that it is a significant expenditure for us, out-of-district tuition for our special education children. You know, it's a commitment that is mandated, and we make it, and it is quite a bit of the, it's almost it's going to almost be $7 million of our budget for next year. And the other area that I thought was fairly steep, not necessarily in the dollars, but a 29% increase in utility cost, which is unusual because we've had flat utility cost for 5-6 years. So I guess that's based on the difficult weather and then the cost of all utilities that we've seen, not only in private homes, but also now in, for our schools.
Right. It's, this winter, we're getting slammed.
Right.
Because of the cold and whatnot. So yes, you'll see an increase there to reflect the fact that we're going up. And I don't have that page in front of me, but I think that might actually have insurance in it as well.
Property insurance,
Yeah.
10%.
Because we also have large increases in our insurance. We're an insurance group with other school districts.
Yeah.
And all of our school districts, and over the last few years, between the hurricanes and the snowstorms and whatever, we've all submitted claims that have been paid, so we're all seeing pretty large increases in our insurance costs. So you will see in insurance, several different areas, in even our liability insurance, rather large increases because we've been hit with premium increases over the last few years. So I budgeted 10% in all those areas.
Right. And so I don't mean to be obscure. Percentages don't tell the whole story. Percentages depend on the dollar amount. But when we're looking at every event and trying to stay within a 2% increase, I think it's relevant for us to just discuss periodically those items that are outside of that 2%, especially, sorry.
You're the last
It's
person
off.
we were
It's
looking
just
at.
It's just buzzing. Especially areas that are impacted, and especially utilities where we've had such a successful conservation program, and we've managed, even with the increased use of our electric and our gas, we've managed to keep a cap on those costs over the years of our program. With the unusual climate events over this winter, all of a sudden now we've had to exceed that cost, which
It's back to back.
we have no control over, and last year's catastrophic kind of weather situations. Just pointing.
Dana, so we have some schools who are, for PTOs, are purchasing window units, air conditioning, so are we building in what I'm sure will be increased utility costs for those efforts?
That's part of it as well, yes. Because that's why we're also seeing some costs go up. Yep.
Any other comments from the board? I'd like to recognize the public for the agenda item. Yeah.
Amy Flax, 93 Fairhill Drive. It's like deja vu, but I have new info. First, I'd like to thank Ms. Sullivan, Dr. Dolan, Ms. Kerstead, and the Board of Education for all their community service and what they do to serve the children in the community, and for the opportunity to speak tonight. First, as you know, we had such a wonderful performance at Roosevelt Intermediate School 13. I will also say that some of you who have attended might have known that it might have been a little difficult to hear some of the kids depending on where you were sitting in that fabulous performance. And it really is a joy to follow the wonderful presentation and all the wonderful things that our kids get to do in the town of Westfield. So first, I want to thank the board and the administration for looking into the auditorium issues at all of our schools. I truly appreciate it. I would ask if the board and the administration could look into having all of the auditoriums cleaned from top to bottom, including lights and sound equipment. As Mr. Matesic pointed out, and as I found out Edison School did, I would actually recommend that while that was being cleaned, that maybe we could get a state of inventory where these auditoriums stand. And I would hope that maybe we could, going forward, have the cleaning of the auditoriums put on some regular cleaning schedule. I have learned that if you actually clean your lights for stage, that they can, and they're cared properly, they can last for decades. So that is one fix, and one thing we could do going forward is just keeping those spaces clean. I would also point out that two separate people pointed out to me that Cranford High School has a beautifully maintained auditorium. It is an old auditorium, and maybe we can learn from them what it is they do to maintain that structure. I am truly a person who believes that it is not important that we reinvent it ourselves, but we go and we find out what other people do well, and we take what we think they do well and replicate it. So that would be kind of, maybe we can look around and see other places and how they do it and model it. I would ask that the board and administration please continue looking into fixing the sound, the lights, the appearance of these spaces, and the sound being both technical and acoustics. The board did receive an email that we also needed for the Westfield High School list, the cost of a pro light tech. I also want to point out that our spaces are used by the community. I do not have a full list of how the community does use it, but the Westfield Community Band uses our space, the Westfield Adult School uses it, the Westfield Recreation Workshop uses it, Recreation Department uses it, the New Jersey Workshop, Summer Workshop uses our space, YMCA, the Chinese School, there's a fundraiser for Rett syndrome, and I also want to point out that at Westfield High School we invite veterans to the dress rehearsal of the show, which is this Wednesday, which is an example of how we open our doors to the community. Finally, I was just curious, and maybe you guys can talk on it, and I have a couple more things to say, but you know, I don't know what is included in the 5-year plan for those auditoriums, but I'm hoping that some of the issues are included in the facilities for the 5 years. And I had some opportunity to reflect on the last meeting. And, you know, we spend a lot of time maintaining our technology and upgrading our technology when it's needed, but we only upgrade when it's needed because we have maintained it all along. We maintain our athletic facilities, and we upgrade them when necessary too. We should really do the same, and I'm sure we do the same with our building infrastructure, but the auditoriums actually are a huge intersection of technology, our light and sound equipment, and the actual facility. So these facilities should really be treated the same as other aspects of the Westfield Public School District in terms of technology and facility maintenance. I am truly looking forward to the report on facilities on March 25th, and I'm really hoping that we can all work together, the taxpayers, the administrators, the board, and we can all work together to have the problem addressed, to have spaces that we as an entire district can be proud of. And thank you for the opportunity once again to speak. And I thank you once again for your dedicated service to the children of Westfield. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
So I just have a follow-up question. I mean, I'm sure we do some maintenance and cleaning of the auditoriums. Can you talk a little bit about that? What we do currently?
We do clean in the summer. They clean lights and do all that. As far as the routine maintenance, we are meeting tomorrow with the intermediate and high school principal to trying to get. I think probably there's the issue is who's responsible when there's work orders that have to be submitted. Maybe they're not getting to us, because if we get a work order, then maintenance will call in somebody and we'll have it fixed or repaired or whatever. But who's responsible for actually generating a work order when there's a problem or detecting the problem? That's what we're going to meet with the principals tomorrow to get a feel for, you know, what is the system, because obviously there's a breakdown somewhere.
And will Linda King be there as well?
As of now, she's actually not scheduled to be at that meeting. You can see if she's available, but as of now, she's not.
Yeah, it just makes sense. I mean, certainly right, I agree. We got to figure out, someone needs to take ownership, and whether it's someone each school, to have someone at the district level who's responsible makes sense, and it really seems to fall under Dr. King. I don't want to add more work to anybody's plate, but someone's got to own that. I'm glad y'all are meeting, that's great.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Dana. Move on to the second superintendent's report?
Yes, we have a second superintendent's report, is correct. So certainly, board members know that the requirement now from the state is that twice a year, a report is provided on violence, vandalism, substance abuse, and harassment, intimidation, and bullying. There's one aspect of this that's a bit new, and I'll get to that in the second half of the presentation. But the beginning part of it, honestly, is what we do report on twice a year. So, from September through December, which is the period defined by the state, the New Jersey Department of Education, a total in the district, there were 5 incidents of what the state defines as violence, vandalism, substance abuse incidents. Let me be clear, there are certainly other reasons why children or students get disciplined in our schools, but for those that meet the criteria of the state, there were 5 incidents from September through December. On one of those, the police were notified and a complaint was filed. Again, the law is really pretty clear on many things, and we know that if certain things happen, it's not a judgment call. We have to, if it's against the law, we have to notify the police, and it becomes a legal issue. In all of the cases, the students involved were suspended. Getting to the harassment, intimidation, and bullying, from September through December, there were 13 investigations. That means there were 13 allegations that someone was harassed, intimidated, or bullied. For all of those, as required by law, there were 10-day investigations. Out of those 13, 2 were confirmed by the school and by me to be harassment, intimidation, or bullying, and both of those were also affirmed by the Board of Education. The asterisks are there to just explain that that only counts the ones that were affirmed by the board by December. And in fact, we had one that was not confirmed until January. But that will be carried over to the next report just because of the requirements of the state report. Now, for harassment, intimidation, and bullying, that the student who is a victim, the law says that that child has to be a member of a protected category. So the next slides talk about that. And let me just be clear, even though there are only 2 confirmed cases, and we're only talking about the aspects of the 2 confirmed cases, that's all we'll report on to the state, a given victim may have more than one protected category. So when it doesn't add up to 2, that's true, but it's because more than one thing was categorized. So in our 2 cases, there were 2 that involved sexual orientation, 1 that involved mental, physical, or sensory disability, and 2 had another distinguishing characteristic. I just have to stop here for a minute and be a school marm. You know, so many things that adults and students and TV and movies say on a regular basis, it is bullying or harassment or intimidation. Calling somebody a name, making fun of the way they look, making fun of something about them. It's not funny. I mean, I hear adults do it all the time and laugh, but it's not funny. And when students do it in a school, it is considered harassment, intimidation, or bullying. I think it's very easy to fall into that, but it's not what we should be doing. So, sorry, every now and then I am a school marm. It's just what happens. With all of these incidents, both of these incidents where it was confirmed, obviously there are responses. In both of the cases, there were student conferences. There were parent conferences. The reason the number 3 there was at least one parent who was not the parent of someone who was confirmed to be a bully, but it was very important to talk to that parent going forward to help that child. And there was also detentions that were involved as well. And both of those cases, they happened to be verbal. We have certainly had a lot of instances, different times where they have been more involving the internet, texting, etc., but these 2 that were confirmed happened to be verbal ones. And both of them happened to be at Edison in the first part of the year. Okay, so that's the first part of the report. Now, the state, when they passed the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights, one part of it was that every school would get a grade for harassment, intimidation, and bullying. It took the state a little bit of time to figure out how the grade would be determined. So because of that, that is not a misprint up there. We have to report on from January 11th through June 30th, 2013, so about a year and a half. Is that right? About 2.5 years, I guess that is. 2.5 years, we have to report on all the instances there. So that is not a mistake. That's because they had not completed the grading beforehand. When the system that the state came up with has 8 different elements, and all of these are required. And I will tell you that all of our schools completed the state requirements for all of this. They'll end up with different grades, but all of them met all of these. We are required to have programs or other initiatives in each of our schools for harassment, intimidation, and bullying. We are required to provide training so that all of our staff understand our board-approved harassment, intimidation, and bullying policy. Other staff instruction and training programs to extend that, curriculum instruction for the students at every different level. The HIB personnel has to do with the fact that each of our schools is required to have an anti-bullying specialist, and our district has an anti-bullying coordinator, and actually he is here with us today. That is Mr. Joe Malanga, who is also the principal of Wilson School, but he is here this evening. School level harassment, intimidation, and bullying incident reporting is very specific. There are very specific timelines for every aspect of that reporting process. The investigation procedure, again, that is very prescribed as to what is to be done, and the reporting to the state is also prescribed, and there are timelines for that. So every school in the district was required to complete a self-assessment. The self-assessment was to be done by the school safety team. The school safety team is comprised of the principal, the anti-bullying specialist, other staff members, generally teachers, and also a parent. So each of those individual groups had to look at a series of 25 questions, and for each of the questions, they had to determine if they didn't meet the requirements. For that question, you got 0. If you only partially met the requirement, you got 1. Those 2 were easy. Honestly, we didn't have any 0s or 1s for any of the questions. No school safety team chose 0 or 1. Here's where it gets difficult. Okay. All of the schools met the requirements, so they all got at least 2s. Some of them exceeded. Some of the questions, the way they were written, some teams said, well, how could you exceed? For example, if the question was everyone in the staff trained? If the answer is yes, a number of teams said, well, yes, we met the requirement, that was a 2. Whereas other teams thought that that was a 3, because how could you get any better? It's a silly point, but I only make it now because all of our teams on all 25 questions either got 2s or 3s.
Gave themselves 2s or 3s.
Gave themselves 2s or 3s on a self-assessment, as did schools all across New Jersey, all self-assessed, which means that our schools all meet all the requirements, but their scores will range from 50 through, hypothetically, 50 to 75, although they all met all the requirements. So I will not belabor every
So the state
question.
didn't give you any guidelines to say what's a 2 and what's a 3, they just said wing it, like they do with many other
Right, they
things.
might not use the word wing it, but yes.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
It's essentially what they're doing,
They
they're not
did.
really giving
And
explanation.
each group had to come to grips with what did that mean for each question.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the questions, it was easy. For example, some schools looked at what they did for the Week of Respect, and they said, you know, it was okay how we commemorated the required Week of Respect, but we really could have done better. Another school looked at the programs they had provided, and they said, you know, that speaker really wasn't great for the younger students, so why don't we do a better job next year? Well, that's fine. That's a 2 then. You met the requirement, but you could have done better. But I think it is fair to say, not just in our district, but in the state, a lot of teams struggled with what's a 2 and what's a 3. So I just give that information. So there are, for each of the core elements, each school then just got a sub-score, which we can go over just a bit. So the first area of programs, and again, this was one where some of them decided, you know what, our programs can be better next year. Next one has to do with trainings. The third element has to do with making sure our administrators are well-trained and our anti-bullying specialists are well-trained. The fourth one has to do more with things like Week of Respect. The fifth one has to do with making sure that each school safety team meets at least twice a year to review trends, etc. The sixth one has to do with reporting. The seventh one with investigative procedures. And the last one with the reporting. You actually have to kind of talk about how you're reporting on this report. So all of our schools met within the range, all of our schools met all the requirements, and all of these numbers, you cannot convert them into any grade or anything else, you have to keep these numbers. All of these are required to be posted on our on each school website and the district website, which they will be. They have to be up there by March 18th, and they will be up there, I believe, tomorrow, so that we will be set. What is really important is we really do continue to take this very seriously, the trainings and the programs. It's not something that you do 1 or 2 years and you're finished. It's constant. It is constant. Even children who, you look at them at elementary school and they're caring and they understand what you're supposed to do with your friends, and then suddenly those children get to be middle school or high school students and things change a little bit, and you have to address them at their own age. I mean, it is a constant work. We try to address that in a number of ways, including there's so many wonderful children's books out there that really emphasize how we should all treat each other. Our counselors do lessons at each of the levels. We review our code of conduct. We review the anti-bullying Bill of Rights. And we have speakers who come with first-person accounts that is sometimes especially effective at our high school level. At each and every one of our schools, as I mentioned, we have anti-bullying specialists. They are all listed on this slide, and they're also listed on our website. Should you know of any child who is being bullied or intimidated or harassed, they can report it, the parent can report it. If there is something going on that is not appropriate, we want to know that. And again, our anti-bullying coordinator is Mr. Joseph Malanga. All of this is based on something that's very important that we believe all of our children, we hope they are learning every day. It is so important to have respect for yourself, respect for others, and respect for your community. It's not just something we teach in school, it's something we truly believe we want our students to leave Westfield schools having all of that with them.
The school self-assessments, are they a snapshot in time, or are they supposed to be over the 2.5 years averaged out?
This one was over 2.5 years.
Gotcha.
Going forward, I believe they are meant to be annual. I believe that's correct.
Gotcha. So that could be why we see some of the lower scores in some areas,
Yes,
because they started out with a brand-new law, and then
Yes.
you should improve over time.
right. I think you're right.
Well, there's probably conversations going on about, why, what, do you need support for schools that maybe self-assess lower? Was it just a matter of
Yes.
the subtle distinction between the numbers, or is there support that you need, or are there ways that we can kind of boost, the number to make the team more confident that they're going to be able to pick a 3 next time, right? I assume.
That's absolutely true. And one of the schools, they did struggle a lot with the self-assessment, and what they decided was, and in a way it's not surprising at all, what they needed to do more this year, and they have been doing, is submit surveys to the students, so they actually know, instead of guessing, what are the students thinking, and where is it that we need to work harder on. So yes, the teams are absolutely working. Additionally, Mr. Malanga has meetings with all of the anti-bullying specialists. At least twice a year, and also is in communication with them when either we get additional resources or when there are questions as well.
Anne?
So, just so I'm understanding this, we have 6,300 students and 2 validated reports of bullying.
For the first 3 months of the year.
I mean, that seems amazing to me, don't you think? I mean, that the number is so low. Do you feel confident that we're administrators, teachers, our staff are reporting incidents at a proper level?
I certainly know that everyone is aware of it and educated and takes it seriously. I am confident in that. I know all of our students understand it as well. I do know sometimes things like that can be rather quiet to begin with, and sometimes they build. I will tell you that I would imagine when we look at the second half of the year, our numbers will be larger. I do know sometimes when we investigate, and the board would know this from some of the reports that we've reviewed, we will have an allegation that someone was called inappropriate names and made to feel badly. There was one in particular that I can think of. It happened to include technology, and yet when the technology was looked at and they saw the messages being sent back and forth, both sides were being very inappropriate. So while that's wrong and there are consequences for that, it's not harassment, intimidation, and bullying. It's something else. And I will also say it is really important for us to continue to watch, because it is easy for someone to feel intimidated. And so we have to be vigilant.
So just a follow-up. So I just noticed that on core element 6, on the self-assessment, those numbers were very low. The maximum of 12 and the highest was 6. They seem to be lower than the other areas, and so I don't know if Mr. Malengo wants to,
You know what?
am I reading that right?
You know what? There's a mistake there.
Should have been 6.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
It should have,
Yeah.
the
Doesn't add
highest
up.
amount, the max should have been 6 there.
And that gets us to
Well, that
75,
solves
not 81.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you for catching that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry I didn't catch it.
Yeah, I was really wondering what the problem was there.
Yeah, I went through and they added up to 81.
Yeah, right.
My apologies. I should have picked that up.
Mitch,
I would have a
Ginny?
question for Mr. Malango, who's here tonight. So we've had a couple of years of this now. And I think I've been on the board pretty much the whole time, and I've definitely noticed a decrease in the number of HIBs that we're seeing. So I'd be curious, your thoughts on kind of the learning curve. What do you think has changed? Has the culture changed? I mean, are you seeing,
Mr.
a real
Malango.
change there?
Yeah. Thanks. It's all tucked in the corner today for some reason.
Yeah, it's all the way back there.
For many years, as being a principal in Westfield for 14, we were always concerned about acts of bullying prior to the law even being implemented by the state of New Jersey. So much hasn't changed in that area, except I believe that the culture in each of our buildings have changed. And I can't speak for all of my colleagues, but I know there's more attention paid to a situation when it occurs. How we handle it is much differently than we've ever done before. Many of the cases that we see, like years ago, are really pure conflict. So that's important for us to recognize as well. I think that our cultures in our schools have changed because the law says it needs to change. And what we've done is made every effort to provide very important training for our staff, our students. Codes of conduct, which are in every building, and we review them at the very beginning of each school year, have a big impact on what kids are doing. We also have implemented so many different things within our classrooms where our teachers are better prepared. Also, our counselors, our elementary, I'm speaking about elementary more because that's what I know, do visit the classrooms often. Dr. Dolan mentioned reading certain types of books to them. A book called One, which is a great example of explaining to children about differences in people and how we have to accept each other. We have school themes that evolve around each of our buildings about kindness, acts of kindness, random acts of kindness. So I think it's more in the forefront. It's something that we talk about all the time. I can only cite, like within my building, we have on every Friday, we recognize children for an act of kindness over the public address system. And they come down and they get a little bracelet that says you've been kind. it means so much to them. And I think everyone is really trying to do their best to be a good citizen, be trustworthy, be caring, sensitive, respectful, all of the pillars of character. And I know all of the elementary schools in Westfield are doing the same. So I think there's been a cultural change. I think that the numbers have decreased, obviously, but the numbers, I attend the county meetings probably monthly with every district in the county being there, and the numbers have significantly decreased in all areas, in all counties, I mean in all schools and communities. So it's a constant or consistent trend that's going on. In regards to teachers reporting incidents, I think they're reporting them as they have before. I just think people are really thinking about it before they make a phone call to the principal. A parent may consider it and say, was this really bullying? You know, the first time bullying, I believe the law was put into place, it was repeated instances. And now the law states on the first instance. So that makes a significant difference. But I think we have trained our staff to look for issues that are really critical to a child being safe in school, feeling good about coming to school. Every child's entitled to be in a school where they feel safe. And I think we've all accomplished that in our schools in Westfield. We do have incidents from time to time, but we have 6,300 children. So I don't know if that's helped to answer your question.
Yeah.
I think it's more about a shift, a cultural shift.
It sounds like the spirit of the law, even though there's a lot of issues, with it, the spirit of the law is working.
The spirit of the law is working. It doesn't necessarily mean we agree with every part of the law.
Without a doubt, right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Ginny?
Yeah. Oh, Joe, maybe you should stand. I'm
Stay.
sorry.
You're this close.
Yeah. So being the, wanting a process in place personally, I'm just wondering if you've considered as the overall coordinator, if there's value to discussing, constructing, developing a rubric for this assessment model to help the teams that are going to go through the self-assessment and the questions that they're answering determine placement on the the range of answers. Of course, there's nothing that says that the questions will change over time, but if they did stay at least similar for 2 or 3 years, would there be value in interpreting the quality answers at least at the second and third level,
Absolutely.
so that people in multiple schools would have the same frame of mind?
I think Dr. Dolan said it very clearly, is that each school interpreted the questions in a different way. I think one was being highly effective, or what was to get a 3, I think it was...
meets requirements or exceeds requirements.
Exceeds requirements. And, the requirement of the safety team meeting twice a year...
You do or you don't, right?
You do or you don't.
Right.
Yeah, but if you
And
meet
Yes
3
or no?
times, then you exceed.
But then you
Well, see,
exceed.
there was a disagreement at
There you
the
go.
Right.
teams too. There we are.
So I think what will happen now is these the findings, when I meet with the ABSs, we'll review the self-assessment, because if it happens to be the same again, I would think we all need to be on the same page. And I think that's what happened there. If that kind of answers what your question
So you
is.
would attempt to come up with some
Oh,
kind of
absolutely.
of scoring mechanism
Sure,
that would allow a similar interpretation.
right.
And I do wonder,
I think it's helpful.
I don't know, but I do wonder if the state's going to do the same based on the way, well, right, it's possible, based on the way things have been scored across the state.
Are there any other areas that we look at for internal quality controls that maybe the state doesn't ask us to report, but we look at to see if our program is working?
Well, one of the things we did do was a climate survey
Right.
about 6 months, about
Last
a year
year.
ago.
Yeah, the end of the school year
Right,
last
which
year.
was another way for us to investigate and see how we're doing, and the results of that were very good overall.
And will we be doing that again to see change over time?
I'm not sure if we'll be doing it this year. We might be giving it a year break, but we will be doing it again, yes.
Right.
Yes. And some of the schools, as I mentioned before, not all of them, but some did small surveys, not full, complete
Right.
climate surveys,
Right.
but surveys to identify where there might be problems.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, before we move on to personnel, I just wanted to step back a moment, and I just wanted to thank Amy and the other parents who came last week and this week to talk about the auditoriums. I know they have done a lot of research, not only to come talk with us, but they work tirelessly also to make sure that the performances in all of our schools are as good as they are. So we appreciate your time and efforts as well. And thank you for coming out the last couple of board meetings, and we look forward to seeing you next board meeting, as Amy said. So I just wanted to thank you for that. So personnel, Mark?
I'd like the board to consider personnel items numbers 1 through 8. Could I have a second?
Second.
Mitch, thank you. Dr. Dolan?
Yes, we do have one retirement tonight, and that is Barbara Costine, who has worked as a secretary at Westfield High School for more than 22 years, working in various offices in the high school. She has most recently held positions in the main office, where she has ably assisted the administrator in charge of testing and also the master schedule. Barbara has been a caring, thoughtful team player, and her skills and her quick wit will be missed.
Any questions? Okay, Dana?
Ann Carey,
Yes.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Roseanne Kirstead,
Yes.
Ginny Lights,
Yes.
Gretchen Olig,
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
Nothing else on personnel? Facilities.
Facilities,
I think we'll cover it all at the next board meeting.
okay. Long-range planning?
I have nothing to report out of committee, but what I would like is just to give a brief question to the board members. I would ask you to send me thoughts, ideas, concerns, areas of interest that you would like Long Range to look into. I know a couple of things have been mentioned at the table. Mark had brought up the question of staffing and tenure, I guess, years of tenure within department staff, an analysis of composition of staffs within different departments. And I think there are a few other ideas that have been mentioned and in passing, but I would really like us to concentrate, if you will, on some of your thoughts as to some of those things that you think Long Range could bite into.
Great idea.
Thank you.
Policies.
Yeah, moving right along. I would like to ask the board to consider policy item number 1, to approve for first reading the following policies: 2230, course guides, and 2510, adoption of textbooks. Can I have a second?
Thank you, Jenny.
So these policies were sent home in your Friday packet, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at them. They were evaluated in the normal course of our 2000 review. They're up for their five-year annual review. And both of these also were reviewed by the curriculum committee before they came to the policy committee. So the changes suggested by the committee are marked in red. Their course guides actually went back and forth a couple of times, but it has been, we're making suggested changes to conform to the document that Paul created for staff members when they're developing curriculum. And I'll leave it at that unless anybody has any specific questions.
Yeah, quick question on the textbooks, and I was checking in the red to make sure I didn't miss it, so I had the other one in front of me. So obviously, we're in a new era here where many textbooks are online, and obviously the ability to save money if it makes sense, within the curriculum. I'm just wondering if there will be a discussion or any mention in the policy specifically about that discussion, or at least saying that when appropriate, the decision should be discussed within each department about the ability to have the textbooks online, because I know many districts around the state, around the country now are kind of heading in that direction, and obviously the days of maybe carrying home the 400-page book is ending, if it makes sense. And I'm not, you know.
My understanding of, I will just say that I know that conversation happens a lot at the curriculum level, and in my understanding of the policy, because the definition of textbook would be that it would encompass whatever online materials that we're reading, and that the same process would be followed. Paul, is that accurate in your view?
Yeah.
So we can call it out if you have some suggested language. It says it means in whatever form the material may be presented. See that second sentence?
Right.
We can say, if everyone agrees, we can say including online.
Or digital, maybe?
Yeah,
digital
I mean,
resources.
I think it's worth mentioning. I mean, clearly that's where we're heading, and where appropriate, it's just going to save money in the long run, hopefully.
Well, hopefully the
not
cost
yet.
structure changes.
Well, no,
Yes.
I know right now that the textbook companies haven't quite given a deal, but, you know, hopefully they're getting the message.
Right, and open source definitely helps in a lot of areas.
Absolutely.
Not every single
Yeah,
course.
yeah. That's fine, just some kind of,
Yeah, why don't
I
we
like
do that?
mention.
So it would just
Prefer
say,
digital.
the second sentence would read, textbook means the principal source of instructional material for any given course in whatever form the material may be presented, including digital resources, which are available and
Yes.
distributed to every pupil. Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Just tell me where you were, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong page.
Second sentence of page one of the policy, 2510.
this one.
Textbook
Yeah,
means?
right.
Yeah, so
Okay.
just after may be presented,
Yes.
insert including digital resources.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I'll stay on that one for a second. On the regulation, too small. Number 1, teachers, I think we're using teaching staff members.
Okay. All right.
I'll let the other one go. Back to course guides.
Sure.
Also, the last sentence on the first page, when we added the information about adherence to content. Teachers really should be teaching staff members.
Okay.
Will adhere to content. I'm not so sure that we need the parenthetical or in accordance with policy 2230, since that's the policy that we're in.
Yeah, you know what? I think we moved that from somewhere, so
We
we can
moved
take
it
that out.
From
We
the
moved it
regulation.
from the regulation.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a couple of little parallel construction updates on page 1 of the regulation. I don't think we need to discuss them necessarily.
Sounds
But
good.
on page 2 of the regulation, item number 5, evaluation.
Yes.
I wasn't sure of why we needed that question at the end of the last sentence, which is a question, how will we know this curriculum is effective for students? Unless we want to say, describe the various methods that make the curriculum effective for students. Given that we don't ask questions in any of the other areas. Can we? Page 2 of 2, regulation.
Course guides, 2 of
Course
2.
guides.
Number 5.
Number 5. You're welcome.
All right. So why don't we just? Yeah. I mean, we can just say.
Play with it and turn it
describe.
somewhere.
Yeah. Just.
Turn it
I
into
got
a
it.
directive.
We'll turn it into a sentence. Yeah.
That's about it. I'll give you my copy. You can see it.
Okay. Perfect.
Back to 2510, where we made the.
Notice that it's the policy committee members who are making.
Well, I'm commenting on the change.
Yes.
Okay,
Go ahead.
that's different then.
That is. This is an aside.
If we go to include all digital
We're the ones that
resources,
read them.
does that take away the teacher's ability to select non-textbook materials for their course? If we call all digital resources textbooks?
I was thinking the same thing, but I think we're okay. Let me see if I can find it.
Textbook means the principal source of instructional
Okay,
materials.
but if a
for
course
any
doesn't have a
course.
particular textbook?
Whatever.
In
I'm
what,
sorry,
it says
what?
in whatever form it may be presented, so.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. The fact that it says the principal source of instructional material. so teachers are still able to use digital, digital resources. That's not the principle, and that's not a textbook.
Okay, I just don't want to tie the teacher's hands
You're
with
right.
day-to-day classroom.
Yeah, I had the same question when we were changing them.
So I don't understand what you just said.
I'm not either, but if you're okay with it.
You didn't want what to happen and it didn't?
Brendan and I are.
I didn't want to change the definition of textbook to include anything that the teacher could present.
So
the
say
students.
say the teacher found an article online that happens to be related to a topic that they're talking about in school, in the class, and the teacher wanted to use that article in the class.
Oh, they
for
wouldn't
that
have to bring
particular
it to
day.
us.
They wouldn't
Right.
have to go through the whole process of getting it adopted
For a
to
textbook.
use in the class.
Unless it's the primary source.
the principal source.
Got it.
Good point.
You good, Jenny? Okay, Dana.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Gallagher?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted?
Yes.
Ginny Light?
Yes.
Gretchen Olid?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yep.
I'd like to ask the board to consider policy item number 2, which is to approve that long list of policies for second reading. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
I do have one thing to call out. After we approved 2330, the homework policy for first reading, Audrey Zavitz, who is the principal at Lincoln, made one suggested change on page 2 of 4 of the regulations. Number 4, kindergarten, we added language that independent reading approximately 10 minutes per night. That was not in what we approved for first reading, so I just wanted to call that out.
The along with?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Did you have a second?
You want to talk about that?
She got a second already. That was on discussion. That was in her discussion.
Right.
Okay.
Anybody else on these policies for second reading? Yeah.
I do, but I just have to find them, so. Let's see what I have. School and media centers, library media, 2362.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the first line of the policy, wherein the board is endorsing and establishing the following missions and goals. I think we're only establishing one mission. And it seemed to me that it's the second part of that sentence, to ensure that all students and staff are effective users of ideas and information. I had a little trouble reading this first paragraph. But this was rewritten. So I would suggest that we take away the S out of mission and get rid of the word and goals and just establish the following mission. Highlight to ensure all students and staff are effective users of ideas and information, put in a paragraph
Yeah.
change, and then move that second descriptive sentence down.
You got it.
Thank
Okay.
you. And then the last sentence, Gretchen, of the policy.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is to Mitch's digital point. School library media center provides physical and intellectual access. So as long as we're calling out physical access, should we be calling out digital access? So should it be physical, digital, and intellectual? I wasn't.
Well, isn't digital the resources and the tools that we're providing access to?
You could provide access to an online database.
I mean,
That
I don't
the
have a
students could
problem
access
with
from home.
adding it. I just,
Well, it was curious that when I came to physical, I mean, it does provide physical access, but it actually provides intellectual access in whatever form
Right.
the access is, except that it is a physical entity. So what do y'all think about that?
Get rid of the word physical. Just get rid of the word physical.
No, I think that, I actually don't,
No.
I hesitate to do that because
Yeah.
I think
It is a
we as a
center.
board embrace the fact that there's a centralized location in every school for that to happen, right? I mean, I don't mean to speak for the board.
No, I agree.
Well, I wonder then, at the juxtaposition of the physical and the intellectual. I mean, I get the intellectual access, but I get the fact that we're providing physical access to resources and tools required for learning.
So take out and intellectual, I mean.
But I
I
think,
kind of like the intellect.
yeah, they were trying to prove, they were trying to,
I know what you mean, but I
I
kind
don't
of like
dislike it. I mean, I like the concept.
Right.
do you think intellectual is just the wrong word?
I don't know.
We don't want to lose the physical, I can understand that, and yet so much of it truly is
Well, it
not.
could be provides a physical space for intellectual access. Or a physical center.
Physical state of the art. So to speak.
Getting ahead of ourselves there.
All right.
Gotta
Well,
get that
gotta
tech
hope
initiative
for it.
passed first. You could say
Well, I'd like you to.
provide intellectual access to physical resources and the digital tools required for learning.
I gotta say, I don't really understand the problem with this sentence. I'm not following, I appreciate that you want me to take a look at it and consider it, but I don't understand the point you're making.
Well, these two adjectives are really describing different things. Physical access is the idea that it is a place.
Right.
Intellectual access, I'm not sure I know what that is. It's not,
So
It's
we
not a
trying to
thing.
say that there's, I'll just try to, I'll give it a shot. So we want to have a physical space where students can go, and honestly, if they do want to touch a dictionary or whatever it is available, and there's one space, but we also want a space where they know that whatever it is they need to access with whatever database, they can easily do it there as well, whether it's online or in the physical space.
Oh, I understood. I took this a totally different way. I understood that we want our library and media centers not only to be a physical place where we can go, but that we also have professionals who are teaching our students how to access the information that they need. We're giving them the skills to be able to access information, the intellectual skills that they need.
well,
That's
it
how
doesn't
I
say
read
that,
it.
but I like it. You could say that. That last sentence, you're just.
That's how I interpreted intellectual access. That we're giving you a place to come and we're going to give you the skills that you need to
Wow.
be able to access the resources and
Me too.
material.
Say it in a better way that I can understand. I mean, say it so that other people can understand it, because I didn't get that out of it, but I like it.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I think
I
that's,
understand it.
That is
Our-
what we try to do. Right?
that's what we're trying to do. Are we doing it?
So the library, school library center provides
Yeah.
physical
Then
and,
we should say it.
Why don't we just take out physical and intellectual and provides access?
Well, if you wanna work on it.
I'll play with it.
I'd love it.
is this second reading?
It is.
Oh,
You can change the language without changing the intent, right?
Well, if we all agree that that's the intent, but then you have to trust me to come up with the language that you like. Let's just wait a second. So
we'll
let me
table it till
provide
next time. It's
physical-
no big deal. It's a one-pager.
All right, yeah. We'll table 2362. But that doesn't mean, Dr. Dolan, that we have to go back to first reading, do we? Or can
We're
we?
not changing the intent. I don't think we do.
I think we can spend 2 more minutes on it and come to agreement. The school library media center provides access to resources, like what Ann said, and the tools required, because the fact that it says library and centers implies a physical place.
Why don't we just say, how about, the school library media center provides physical access to resources and the tools required for learning, as well as, what's this whole professional collaboration piece? Now I'm really, as well as the skills, as well as, yeah, I don't know. I can't do it like
Let's do it
Okay,
offline.
Let me do
okay.
it off, yeah.
Oh, well, okay. So,
So we'll table 2362.
Just vote on the others.
And when it comes back, assuming we don't change the intent of it, it'll come back for
As
second
second.
reading?
Right, and
Yeah.
I'll circulate something to the full board before we have it down for second reading again. So if we need to play with it a little bit, we can.
Thank you. Just one final question on school day. So this is just a little curiosity. The data itself, we don't generally embed in the policy. I don't.
God bless.
I don't.
That's true.
I don't mind it, but generally in what we do in practice, we put in a regulation. And the board in policy represents that they want this to be done.
There was a lot.
Did we
There
talk
was
about
some
that? Did you talk about
conversation about whether we even needed this policy, whether this should be a policy.
Right, we did talk about that.
Well, okay, I mean, I think the first sentence is absolutely appropriate as a policy. Or the board, well, actually, the Board of Education directs the superintendent to determine what times school will be in session, is what I would see as the policy. But in addition to whether or not it should be in the policy or regulation, I just wondered if early dismissal should also be part of it, because in my notes, I had appended a page of early dismissal, at least at the high school. What happened, but it's a fairly rigorous definition of period.
You know, Dr. Dolan, I wonder if making this a one-sentence policy doesn't also alleviate our concern that these times change so frequently, and not altogether all that frequently, but that there's all kinds of times that aren't reflected on the back of the calendar for our pre-K program that aren't contained in here for purposes of consistency and clarification. Maybe we do just have this be a one-sentence policy. We can put this in a regulation, that's up to you. But
Right, and then the regulation can be changed a lot easier than the policy.
Well, yeah.
exactly.
Right, and they shouldn't change that frequently, but they do change occasionally.
No, and maybe there's a sentence that says, the superintendent will recommend any changes to the board for consideration and approval, so that there is at least that oversight of a process of oversight.
Right, well, we could.
You
Yeah.
want to table this one and think about it a little bit then?
And this will be for first reading if it's changed.
Yes, this would be for first reading of this change.
8220. All right, so we have tabled 2362 and 8220.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Ann Carey,
Yes.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olich.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
Thank you. Finally, I'd like to ask the board to consider policy item number 3, which is to approve for second reading the abolishment of policy
Abolition?
2414.
Running on abolition time.
Can she have a second?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions? This was the policy that we didn't need because we don't meet the definition for a high risk.
Ann Carey,
Yes.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olich.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
Curriculum. Nothing to report.
I'll take it.
Finance.
I'd like the board to consider finance items number 1, 2, and 3. And number 1 is the approval of the tentative budget for 2014-2015. You have a second?
Second.
Ginny?
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
I said
I saw the
it.
arm come
She
up.
just did it.
Any questions? Dana, please?
That's what they want
Ann
us to
Carey,
do.
Yes.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Yes.
Gretchen Olich.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay, moving on to legislation.
No report, but we should have a meeting either at the end of March or early April, so I'll send out some times.
Technology Committee.
We are meeting this Friday, and we'll have a report at our next meeting.
I'd like the board to note the notes for the record.
Duly noted.
Thank you. Any unfinished business? New business. Liaison reports.
I have one short one. I attended the PTC president's meeting, I don't know, I think it was last week. I would just say that there was very active and healthy conversation about consistency in grading, particularly at the high school level, and a lot of questions about what we are doing to ensure some consistency without tying teachers' hands. A lot of the similar kinds of conversations that we've had in curriculum, but I thought it was worth noting just because there's definitely conversations being had among our parents about ensuring some consistency, particularly at the high school level. So I have asked them, as always, to give us their concerns and their thoughts. I reminded them, you know, the steps to go to teachers first and then to building administrators and work their way up if they don't feel like their concerns are being met. But I do want parents to know that we are available to the extent they don't feel like their concerns are getting met at the first level. So, and that's it.
Anything else? Recognize public for questions and/or comments. Okay, I'd like to ask the board to approve the following resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by the state and federal law, personnel pending or anticipated litigation, and pending or anticipated contract negotiation, and be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
You need a second.
Oh, can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Hit the gavel. There you go.
Good job.